Hello everyone, my name is Yari. I like to go by YB here on YouTube, and welcome to my channel. We love a humble beginning, and this is my first installment of what I like to call YB Yaps, where I yap about things that matter to me and might matter to you. But let me properly introduce myself first. I am Yari. I am based in New York. I love TV. Just graduated with my bachelor's in TV and emerging media, if you must know. So I'm kind of like experienced or whatever. But aside from that, I'm just here to yap. I love talking about TV. And that's kind of what we're here for today. So during my time in college, I wrote a paper called Good and Bad Girls Fashion, Why Women Can't Win. And it's basically what this whole video is based on. I wanted to just talk about the character tropes of the good girl and the bad girl and how they're dressed and how you're just trying to figure out their personality, how the audience is meant to feel, and overall what kind of message that communicates to women. So let's yap about it. Here's a fair warning that there will be spoilers in this video for Gossip Girl, Desperate Housewives, and Sex and the City. So please, if you do not want to get spoiled, watch it when you're finished with each of the show. In television and film, we viewers encounter many types of character tropes. In other words, a character with consistent behavioral patterns based on their role. Some character tropes include the dumb blonde, typically a blonde girl with little to no knowledge of how the world works, almost always dressed extremely femininely. Or the bad boy, usually a rebellious teenager who challenges authority and is always rocking a hefty leather jacket. You will never see the blonde girl wearing the jacket, and you will never see the bad boy wearing the color pink. The only time a character trope changes their fashion, and I guess in turn changing their trope, is when they go through a major personality change. So think of Sandy from Grease, just her being the nice innocent, oh my goodness, to tell me about it, stud. That's kind of what we're giving. That's the change we're trying to talk about here. These fashion choices for certain character tropes helps the audience associate certain behaviors with specific garments, thus influencing the audience perception of said garments and the people who wear them. This can be seen with two tropes, the good girl and the bad girl. The way both the tropes are dressed in TV contributes to a narrative meant to further control women's dress and how they perceive their sexuality. So that whole part, basically like word for word, was my intro, and it was just too good to not include it in the actual script for this video. My intro for my paper was like beat on beat on beat on beat on beat. But moving on, we're going to be looking at 3 good girls and 3 bad girls, all from 3 different shows: Sex and the City, Gossip Girl, and Desperate Housewives. For Sex and the City, we're going to be focusing on Charlotte York and Samantha Jones. And for Desperate Housewives, we're going to be focusing on Edie Britt and Susan Mayer. And for Gossip Girl, my personal favorite, we are going to be focusing on Serena Vanderwoodson and Jenny Humphrey. I think if you know any of these shows, you already know who fits into the good girl and who fits into the bad girl. But let's define those first. So the good girl is characterized as a girl who follows all the rules to a T. The idea of sex makes her sweat. Like, she's just so, you know exactly what I'm talking about, especially when you think of characters like Charlotte or Jenny, early seasons Jenny, might I add. I don't want to talk about too much later seasons Jenny. That's another beast. And so we're talking about just someone who is very conservative, bringing back Sandy from Grease, someone just like her who is like super like, oh, I can't save myself to marriage. And that's not meant to make fun of her, it's just kind of how she's portrayed. She's portrayed as a rigid like person who just simply cannot fathom having sex without at least some feelings involved, or always having to aspire towards marriage and things like that. On the other hand, the bad girl is kind of the slut, frankly speaking. There is, I think, in each example of a bad girl, there is a clip, at least one, because there's gonna be more, but at least one in each where the bad girl is slut shamed, called a whore, a slut, a hooker, a prostitute. I'm like sure, like I am so sure of it that I know when I'm editing I'm going to include it, but I'm just sure that I'm going to find it. I'm sure.
A little blowjob, and I'm a hooker with no taste.
Susan had met the enemy, and she was a slut.
The only prostitute here is you.
So the bad girl is usually characterized by her liberal views of sex and her comfort with her sexuality. Samantha Jones is the perfect example of the bad girl, and I say bad girl because it's like that's kind of what it's meant to come across as. Like, the bad girls are bad. You shouldn't want to have sex with multiple people. You shouldn't want to, or you shouldn't like having sex with multiple people. You shouldn't like being comfortable in your sexuality, you shouldn't like showing skin. And that's just kind of what we're getting into today. It's very much, how do all these women dress and how is that meant to reflect on us as ladies? So let's start with Desperate Housewives. For this video, you don't need to know much about Desperate Housewives, but to give you an idea, we have our 4 main protagonists who live in a beautiful suburbia called Wisteria Lane, and their lives are shaken up when their neighbor Mary Alice commits suicide so suddenly with no warning, and they kind of spend the whole first season just figuring out why did Mary Alice kill herself. It's campy, it's mystery, it's fun, it's whatever. Our main protagonist though is Susan Meyer. I say that Susan is like our main protagonist because I think you can always determine a protagonist by who their love interest is, because yes, we start off with Janine in Abbott Elementary, but you can definitely tell it's Janine because now, aside from all the time we spend with her, she has an active love interest that we are meant to root for and follow. And that's the same with Susan. Everyone else in the cast is married, or in some cases mostly married, and Susan's the only one that is established as single, and that's when she meets Mike. So her main love interest in the story and just throughout the entire series is Mike. I don't really care to say his last name. I think Mike has to be one of the most uninteresting love interests that I've seen in all of my time watching TV shows and rewatching them 1,000,001 times. But just Mike. He's a plumber. And the reason I bring him up is because that's kind of how we are introduced to our bad girl, Edie. So before we move on to her, let's talk about how Susan is dressed. Susan is constantly in just simple clothing. She's meant to portray the girl next door, which is another trope of just a simple girl. Like she's just Susan. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, Susan, the girl next door. She's just someone you would meet on the street. And it's kind of meant to portray some like relatability. Like, I can relate to her. She wears like t-shirts and low-rise jeans with those. You never see her midriff, and she's clumsy. She's all these things, and that kind of is just portrayed in her fashion. That's not shade. Like, her fashion's just like, I am a mom who lives in a little suburbia. I don't have time nor the want to really dress up for anything or anyone, and so that's just kind of how she's dressed. Edie, on the other hand, we meet her and she's like in this nice revealing top, low-rise jeans, her like hair's pushed back. Yeah, Edie's introduced as like this bombshell. Actually, no, she's not introduced as a bombshell, because bombshell is kind of a compliment. She's introduced as a slut. Actually, filming Yari, she's introduced as a predator. Mary Alice quite literally says that she's the most predatory woman on, or predatory divorcee on the Wisteria Lane or something.
Britt was the most predatory divorcee in a 5-block radius.
And I know like the times were different, but that's kind of still insane to me. I don't really, like, I know times were different. I'll get into that in a couple of seconds, but it's also just like predator implies that these, like, that is just so loaded to me. And call me sensitive, call me whatever you want, but like Edie was just trying to get her mans. And like I said earlier, it quite literally, like every character that is a bad girl that I'm analyzing on this list is as characterized as a slut at least at minimum one time. Edie comes in and she's trying to get at Mike Mike is his name, right? Mike Delfino. I just don't care about him. Edie comes in, she's super like, oh, hey, Mike. And, you know, she's really making a pass at him. She's like, oh, I have some pipes that need to be fixed because he's a plumber. And so, you know, she's trying to get at him. Fine, go ahead. And Mike is like, yo, I'll do it. And then Susan's over here like, oh my God, I have to get him. And this is where another like common I guess, theme is with the good girl and the bad girl. The good girl and the bad girl sometimes or often clash. Susan and Edie clash basically until the very end, and again, it's like Susan hates Edie simply because she's promiscuous. Like I don't think I ever knew why we didn't like Edie, when in reality Edie was just like, I'm here to get my man. And it's not like Edie has ever really shown signs in the beginning of, like, I think she just wanted to explore, like, her, I don't know. Susan just never liked Edie from jump. We weren't meant to like Edie from jump. I liked Edie from jump. But again, different time, different shows, whatever.
But I wouldn't trade places with you for anything. You wanna know why? It's the way you are with men. They're like tissues. You use one and toss it away, and then you're on to the next one. At least I'm looking for something real.
So you think this happy ending crap that you believe in is real? Please. I know what men are really like.
As an audience, we are meant to actively root for Susan. We want to root for Susan. That's just kind of like the goal. We want Susan to get with Mike. They have like cute chemistry. They like laugh. Whatever the reasoning is, we need to root for Susan. The show makes it impossible to do that. Now, before I get into why, Edie is meant to be the villain in this story. But that same episode, Susan burns down Edie's house, and that's where you kind of lose me, because God, Edie is called predatory, the enemy, a slut, all within the first couple minutes of meeting her. We are not meant to like Edie, but in reality, Edie's just going for what she wants. And I get it. Desperate Housewives wasn't like released last week. No, it was released years ago. I have to double check. Editor Yari, hey, put in right here what year Desperate Housewives was released, because it was released in the 2000s, and so it's not like they were like ahead of their time. So I digress. But Edie is meant to be the villain, yet Edie, who is simply just pursuing a man who is single, available, and clearly entertaining her, we're meant to root against that, but root for the arsonist who fully burns down Edie's house because she thinks that Edie's upstairs with Mike, but instead she's not upstairs with Mike, starts a whole fire, house is burned down, Edie could have died, and Susan's like, oh no, oh wait, Mike, you weren't here, you weren't there in the fire, yay, I'm gonna hide this from Edie now. And we're meant to root for Susan, and I genuinely do love the show, but I realized towards like middle end I did not like our main character, and I did not understand why. I was like, actually no, I understood why. She doesn't take accountability. She's just always making a mess of things and never really just like, it's the accountability. But I digress. We're not here to talk about Susan. But I'm not the only one, might I add. There's forums and there's videos. There's like a video that Take did on why Susan just sucks. And yeah, I just really didn't like Susan. For anyone wondering, anyone watching this video, my favorite character is Brie. And Gabrielle is a close second. But Lynette climbed her way up in that last season. It was really great. Anyway, that's enough out of me. And I didn't put a spoiler warning because it's really the first episode. If you are coming into watching Desperate Housewives and you're like, I don't want to, just know. Spoiler alert. That Susan burns down her house by the end of season 1. So, moving on. This is a huge spoiler alert. Please take this, just listen, spoiler alert. But we were meant to root against Edie because she is the active roadblock that is established as Susan and Mike not getting together. We're supposed to be like, oh, I want Susan and Mike to get together. And yet, when Susan and Mike do get together, we all see how that turns out. Now, moving on. Sex and the City. I have been consuming a lot of Sex and the City media recently. My brother rewatches it all the time, so I hear him rewatching as I pass by his room. And excuse me, my nail tech, which please admire her work. Please admire her work. Oh, gorgeous. But my nail tech, her and I watch Sex and the City while she does my nails. I've just been really fascinated with Sex and the City because aside from the characters we're about to talk about, and Carrie Bradshaw herself, she deserves a video in herself. Carrie's a very interesting character. Very interesting. But anyway, aside from all that, I realized that Sex and the City is purely about the relationships that these women have with men. And I get Sex and the City, the show is about Sex and the City, Carrie's column, but it's very interesting because in a show where I sound like Miranda.
How does it happen that 4 such smart women have nothing to talk about but boyfriends?
In a show where there's 4 female protagonists, all we seem to really hear about with them and follow in their lives are the relationships with men. It's never, oh, like Carrie has like remarkable things going on for her career towards the end of the show, but we're never meant to really root for that. Carrie never really presented it as a goal for herself, but I digress. This is why it's called Yari Yaps, or YB Yaps, whatever I named this thing. That's why it's called that, because I just yap and I just lose track. I have a whole script and I've barely been following it, but I guess that's better. So let's move on. For anyone who doesn't know what Sex and the City is about, Carrie Bradshaw is a columnist writer. Her column is called Sex and the City, and it basically just follows her and her 3 friends and their love lives. Pretty simple, pretty easy. You don't really need to know, again, you don't really need to know the plot or like the concept of the show. Just know that we have our characters Charlotte York and Samantha Jones. My personal favorite of the 4, Miranda, Samantha, Charlotte, Carrie. But Carrie's not there because I dislike her. I just think Carrie's there because she's a poorly written character. She got violated, and not in the show. Well, you can say in the show, but still. Carrie just really got the short end of the stick, and she's our protagonist. Mind you, that's 2 shows back to back where we're like actively disliking our protagonist, and I think Serena suffers the same consequence. So that can be studied in itself, but again, that's why we have this channel. We're gonna be yapping a lot. Charlotte, starting with her, is an older good girl, and I mention her age because that kind of influences how she's dressed. She's dressed in like, she's at one point inspired by Elizabeth Taylor, so it's like, imagine like the Kennedys, like imagine like very traditional styles, very modest, like not showing a lot of skin, long skirts. Oh, she just looks so nice and so like so prim and proper. And again, not making fun of her, that's just how she's dressed. It's like, I'm dressing to conserve my body because my body must be explored through someone that I trust. Okay? Following. And her dress is very much aligned with who she is as a partner, as a person, where she's extremely traditional. She's constantly believing, I have to, dating to marry. I want to be rescued. Where's my prince? She believes in like that fairy tale. They even say in the show that that a guy looks at her for like 2 seconds and she's already like, writing her wedding vows in her head or something along those lines.
Very obvious pattern, I do? What? Tell me. You wait for a perfect guy to ask you on a perfect date.
And when he does, you project this huge fantasy on him, setting up these enormous expectations.
Which promptly blow up in your pretty little face.
You put all your deviled eggs in one basket, so to speak.
That's a horrible pattern. Well,
so that just kind of paints to you what type of person Charlotte is. That's our good girl. She sweats at the idea of sex. She can't say a curse word. She can't say sex itself. She can't say fuck. She can't say any of these words. But Samantha is literally the polar opposite. Samantha, again, has been called a whore. She's been called a slut. She's been called all these things. And she's actively judged by, I would say, every single person, including her friends in the show. I don't want to sit here and yap for 30 minutes about how misjudged and mistreated Samantha is, because again, this show was from the 90s and this show was from early 2000s and 90s, and that is just not a not a favorite. This is like a revolutionary show for its time, considering how open it was with talk about sex, the scenes of sex, like all that stuff. But aside from that, Samantha is quite literally the exact opposite of Charlotte. She sweats at the idea of being in a relationship for too long. She sweats at the idea of even holding someone's hand, which we've seen. She never wants to be in an exclusive relationship. She's only been in like, I think 2 or 3 in the show, maybe 4. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. But aside from that, Samantha dresses in very low-cut tops, low-cut dresses, really mini skirt. Like, she shows all the skin that is possible until she can actually be served at a restaurant. And that's just kind of what bothers Charlotte. Charlotte hates it. Charlotte hates anything that comes out or in of Samantha's mouth, and so that's where those two clash, and that's what we saw with Susan and Edie, where they kind of clash based on their views. They're like, I don't like you.
How can you not know anything about him? You slept with him.
I f***ed him. He made me 6 times. It's good enough for me.
Stop it! Why do you always have to talk about sex like that?
Because I can.
I can't take this anymore. Sex is something special that's supposed to happen between 2 people who love each other.
Or 2 people who love sex.
Oh my God, you're such a...
A what? What am I, Charlotte?
When are you gonna learn that you can't just sleep with everything that comes along?
Hey, Mrs. Softy, at least I'm getting laid.
Charlotte cannot grasp the concept of just having sex with someone you find attractive and then just moving on the next day. Charlotte, sex is a big deal, which is nothing wrong with that, and there's nothing wrong with how Samantha chooses to live her life as well. But it's almost like we are meant to idolize Charlotte's way, even though Charlotte be having some crazy ass takes like this one.
Because women really just want to be rescued. I'm sorry, but it's true. I've been dating since I was 15. I'm exhausted. Where is he?
Who, the White Knight?
And not to mention that Charlotte quite literally was like Carrie and Big's #1 supporter. She was always the one who was like, oh, maybe he likes you this time. And listen, that doesn't mean Samantha is like absolved from having crazy takes. Samantha at one point would be like, I understand that it's natural nature, it's human nature to want to cheat on your partner. I'm just gonna let them. And then proceeds to like not let her man cheat on her. But the thing is, we are still meant to not even idolize, because frankly in this show, I don't think there's any good example of how to be in a relationship on this show. Maybe Samantha towards the end of the show with I forget his name, Smith, because Charlotte is kind of the person or the partner who would just really instill traditional values from the beginning of just like how a man and a woman, like you can never emasculate a man. And Miranda is kind of painted to be like this rigid, strict person who's like the guy of the group or the guy of the relationship too. Carrie has Big, and Samantha is a slut. Samantha doesn't have any real connections with anybody, and that's bad. And so in this show, it's a little different to gauge who they want us to aspire or root for to be like as women. But it's still clear who you're definitely not supposed to be like. You're not supposed to be like Samantha. And I think you guys are sensing a pattern here already on what I'm trying to say. And we'll get into it later, but I think it's pretty obvious by now. Like, you're not supposed to be like Edie. You're not supposed to be like Samantha. And I don't think even if Serena wasn't a bad girl, you're not supposed to be like Serena, because let's get into them next. XOXO Gossip Girl. Now, this is my personal favorite on the list. I love Gossip Girl. In case you are interested, Gossip Girl follows a group of super elitist, rich teens who go to school in Upper East Side Manhattan, and online there is a mysterious online persona following their every move and reporting it, and it's called Gossip Girl. And you spend the whole show be like, who's Gossip Girl, who's Gossip Girl, and just following the drama of their lives, because Lord is it dramatic. Serena Vanderwoodson and Jenny Humphrey are a good girl and bad girl. Switched. Serena's a bad girl, Jenny's a good girl. But the thing here is Serena's actually our main character and she's the bad girl. Now, the last two examples had us seeing the good girl as our main character, the person we're supposed to root for. You're meant to root for Serena, go from bad girl to good girl, and she kind of doesn't aspire, you know, she achieves that, I guess, when she gets married at the end. And that's like supposed to be like, oh, she did it, she committed. And again, just like every other bad girl on this list, she has been slut shamed. She's been ridiculed for her sex life. Now, she has made some sexual questionable choices. I won't say she hasn't, and it's not even because I sleep with too many people. She fully slept with her best friend's man. She pulled a Raquel from Vanderpump. Like, she fully did that. And so I can't, listen, sleep with who you want to, but not your best friend's man. Thanks. And so despite us trying to follow Serena's journey and wanting to root for her, she's never, like, her bad girl reputation and title never really goes away. And that's even in her dress. Her dress is very boho. She's very like free. I know it sounds like I'm just talking about her wedding dress, which I'm not, but looking back on it, editing, her dress also is very non-traditional, and I think it's kind of a way of like, she's not your traditional bad girl to good girl trope. She's not traditional at all, and that's kind of played upon in her dress, and also her wedding dress, because not just the pure white that we all know of. I'm not here to follow the rules, and you can see that with her graduation fit, where she's the only one without a cap. She has a little tassel in her hair, which is iconic. She's like, has like all this layers under, like, versus Blair, who has everything traditional, because that's just kind of how Blair likes to be. Blair, I don't think, is a good girl trope. Blair's very much more complicated than that. I love Blair so much. Jenny, on the other hand, she is very like polished, and since the whole kind of like theme, especially the first early seasons of Gossip Girl, like the dress is all academia, so there's a very specific way that you can dress multiple characters in a uniform and still portray their personality, and that's what they do with Serena and they do with Jenny. Jenny Humphrey, on the other hand, she is like the virgin freshman. It's really gross how Chuck introduces her, or like how they introduce her when Chuck's talking about her, like, you know, freshmen are just waiting to be, you know, once he gets through with them, they're like soiled, and it's like so gross. And this one is a little bit later in the timeline of like when these shows were aired, but it's all around the early 2000s. It really doesn't make much of a difference. And Jenny, she's very like nervous about sex. I think she does lose her virginity to Chuck eventually, but that's when she's like off the deep end already. Like, Jenny already like lost her marbles, went through her whole transformation, she's goth, whatever. This now is a little bit of a different dynamic, because Serena, we're meant to root for her, but she just keeps making all these mistakes that keep having her like these people around her just keep labeling her as like, you're a slut, you're a slut, you're a slut, you're a slut. And Jenny is just kind of, interestingly, not the person who you're rooting for, because you're not supposed to aspire to be like Jenny. You're watching Jenny aspire to be like the people that are really killing her and Serena, and they don't clash. So the reason I have them here in this list is because they are very different. They're the different versions of the tropes. Because Serena, yes, she's your bad girl, but she's also your main character, unlike the other two that we talked about. And Jenny is your good girl. She's not your main character, and you don't really want to be like Jenny. The writers aren't trying to be like, you should try to be like Jenny, be a virgin, be a virgin. But out of her and Serena, there's a clear good guy and bad guy. Like, Serena's a mess. But alas, Susan, Charlotte, and Jenny are all painted as these halo bearing angels who are just so, oh, they're so good, they're so good, they're so good, they're so good. Let us not forget, okay, that Susan burnt Edie's house down, showed no remorse. Let's not forget that Charlotte has extreme traditional values that actually sometimes are misogynistic in themselves. And let's not forget that Jenny quite literally stole from a store. She stole from her parents. She ran away from her parents. And yes, that was all like post post, you know, deep end where she like crashed out, but at the end of the day it's still aspects of their character like and that's not to say that all three of these characters are bad people or bad girls or bad whatever. These are to say that this halo effect that we have for the good girls, or that we're meant to have for the good girls, is immediately contradicted by their actions, because it is just not that simple to just be someone who fears sex and then you're automatically a perfect person. And the same goes for the bad girls. Despite how many jokes, despite how many awful comments are made to them about their sex lives, they have been amazing friends to the people around them.
Except for Serena.
And that just can't be ignored. Now again, they're not perfect people either because of what they've done in the past, what they, you know, have done on their time on the show. However, it's just not, you cannot reduce a woman through her fashion, through her actions. You cannot reduce a woman to her relationship with sex. That is just, and obviously it sounds like such an obvious concept. It gets a little old seeing characters that if you like having sex, that is all you are. Samantha is rarely credited as one of Carrie's actual best friends. I'm not saying that Miranda and Charlotte are not good friends to her. I'm saying Samantha fully took out a diaphragm for Carrie. There's a whole video by this creator. I do not know how to pronounce the name. See, I know how to pronounce the name, I just could not remember how the name was spelled. There's a whole video, a 3-hour deep dive of Carrie and Big's relationship that I watched recently, and in that video, Samantha's actions are kind of like brought to light on how good of a friend she's been to Carrie by this creator in this link. The name, I just don't know how to pronounce it, but I'm gonna link it in the bio, simply because it's so good. It's just so strange that kind of all seems to dissipate. All that goodness that all three of the girls do for other people in their lives just dissipates simply because they like to have sex. And it just doesn't, it rubs me the wrong way, you guys. It rubs me the wrong way, and I'm sure it does to many other people. And it just, the complexities of a woman in her relationship with sex, her relationship with her friends, with her relationship with herself, these aspects of a woman are completely lost the moment you introduce sex into the picture. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm wrong. They all dress the same. They all look the same. They all are giving the same. And when I was making the thumbnail of this video, I noticed that majority of the good girls are brunette and all of the bad girls are blondes. That could be a thing in itself. Why are blondes supposed to be like, oh, like the blonde bombshell? There are so many videos out there that talk about these things. I just wanted to add to the discussion because it's something I'm passionate about, but it's just it's just tired. I think you guys get the point, and I trust that you will, because it's tired. It's a tired trope. I think Samantha is arguably one of the best characters in that show because she goes after what she wants. She's a good friend to the people around her. She knows what she wants. She doesn't try to change for anybody else. And even when she was, you know, going through her own hardships and going through everything, when she, near the end of the show, when she was with Smith, I'm not talking about the movies, just like when she was with Smith, she even like softened up and realized she did, like, you know, she just knows herself. She's true to herself. She follows what she wants. Make sure that's why she's a publicist. Like, if there was a character who dressed like Charlotte and acted like Samantha, I think that would have been revolutionary, because it's okay to be sure in your sexuality, be sure in yourself, but also, you know, it's okay to mix it up, because women are more than, there are women out there that dress like Samantha, act like Charlotte, dress like Samantha, act like an angel, dress like crazy. Like, they exist. Because women are just so much more. Women are just more than their dress and their relationship to men. Sue me. Call me Sabrina. Thank you for watching this video. This is the first video that I've actually like talked in and showed my face in. So I guess it is my first like official video. My other video is my documentary. Please feel free to check that out. I worked really hard on it in my last couple semesters of college. And it just talks about the hardships of the CUNY system, the City University of New York system, and how it rushes students to graduate in 4 years, even though it's virtually impossible to do so because of the systems in place. So aside from that, I'm so versatile. You see how many things I can talk about. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it to the end, I'm pretty sure it's going to be like a longish video. I've been filming for a while. And aside from that, Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe because I asked nicely, and so you kind of have to do what I said. And stay tuned for more videos. I have a video coming up on Sabrina Carpenter, which is really exciting, and I want to make a video that isn't also about gender, so it's not like the only thing that you guys think I can do. I can talk about anything I want because it is my channel and I love yapping, and I can yap endlessly about many things. So please stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye. My nails. Also, if you hear that creaking, it's my fucking chair. Ah! I can't believe Raquel stayed over at Sandoval's.